Haze is an exhibition based on residency undertaken at Shen Shaomin studio with myself, Jensen Tjhung and Tully Arnot. Day to day we would spend time at the compound just really talking and engaging with the assistants. We'd have day trips to Beijing where we visited the temples or the Forbidden City or Tiananmen Square, and we did a lot of artist studio visits. The title of the work is 23 Ming vases for Little Horse. Everything that moves breaks. This work, I guess, is a reinterpretation of Ming vases, which are considered quite precious and valuable, and a real symbol of, you know, the amazing culture of China and the history. And so I wanted to look at that form, but reinterpreted that with inspiration from the hutongs, which are housing development establishments around the Forbidden City, which are now kind of crumbling. I really had this kind of stereotypical idea of what Beijing would be, and it just wasn't. There were a lot of the old kind of traditional culture just seemed like it was falling, and it was very busy and things getting built fast and maybe not finished exactly, so they looked like that they had just been built. That is reflected in the work.
I've got 5 or 6 different works. Downstairs there's Cold Beer, Cold Women, which is it's a kind of a light piece. It's made from rope lights that are just cable tied together. That work came about just, you know, it was a really sort of simple way of producing a signage that I saw a lot in China, and I wanted to kind of reference that and create something new. And it's just a translation of cold beer into simplified Chinese, which, you know, it's a cultural thing. It's when you order a beer in Chinese, you can't just say you want beer. You have to say cold beer because they're generally served at room temperature. And I thought that was an interesting thing, the way that we come in and kind of impose a way of serving something. Up here, there's Happy Mouse, Sad Mouse. It's like a animated note, a $1 note that's on a motor that's tilting forward and backwards. And the way that the note is folded, it makes the face look like it's smiling and frowning. I have 2 kinetic plants. I got a friend, Jason Fu, to help title the works. One's nervous plant needs to pee, and the other one's nervous plant had too much coffee. And so they're artificial plants that have servo motors attached that are controlled by a microcontroller. The motors make them move about, so they're kind of taking something artificial and then animating it to, in a way, bring it back to life. And that tension between alive and dead, or kind of simulated and real, is something that I felt really fits with the Chinese experience. And then there's a video work which is called Postcards from My Bedrooms, Wish You Were Here, which is a collage of lots of different incidental photos that I took during the residency. So photos I took in my bedroom where I was staying, or tourist photos, and it's all kind of collaged together to create a very sort of artificial space, lots of kind of veneers and things like that. And the soundtrack to it is just a snippet that I took from karaoke of one of Shen's assistants, Dan, singing, and that is put on a loop, so it's a kind of endlessly repeated chorus to a song. 6 o'clock was time to clock off, so every evening dinner started at 6. Often we had guests over, so there'd be a big table with, you know, sometimes 20 people. We'd eat a lot and drink a lot, and that would kind of go on into the night. And then at about midnight, often Shen has his own karaoke room in the house, and we'd go in there and sing into the night until we just crashed out. It was an interesting experience because I guess the artist's life is quite solitary. You're often in the studio, spending a lot of time alone, and the residency was, you know, I guess China in general was the opposite of that. In China, you don't have any time to yourself or alone time. So I think we all found it quite intense to, you know, from breakfast at 8 a.m. till dinner at 6 p.m. and then drinking and karaoke, we were always surrounded by a big group of people. I think we all would go on sort of big walks. The studio was at the base of a bunch of mountains an hour and a half north of Beijing, so we would all go on sort of long walks through the mountains alone and try and just kind of find that sort of solitary time. And that was, I think that was an interesting part of it. And it was strange to always be surrounded by people and always be kind of hosting guests. And I guess in China you're always kind of on show in a way. And that was something I had never experienced.
The title of the show, Haze, obviously refers to the weather in Beijing and the sort of climate over there that we experienced. It also alludes to the mental state we were in a lot of the time there. And for me in particular, I really enjoyed staring right into the sun. New God, False God is a work based on a lot of thoughts I had about people when I was in China and the psychology of people in China. The area that we stayed in was a rural part of China north of Beijing, and there were some nearby surrounding villages that were very dusty, and you could tell that they were quite new and life was quite hard there. There were also a lot of strange public sculptures in places that we went to, and the function of these sculptures I would often think about in relation to the people that lived there and their day-to-day. Also, everything was really dusty where we were in the mountains and in amongst the cornfields, so there was a lot of dirty sculptures. So I've made a dirty sort of sculpture. This plinth in the middle is sort of based on a plinth and a public sculpture. This idea that this plinth or this object has been sort of affected or taken over is obviously really upsetting the two figures that are looking at it. I kept thinking in China that people need to feel better than other people. You know, I think that's generally something you can say about people. And so with these people I wanted to create work that was sort of tense and desperate and kind of a bit vulgar. These people are really clutching onto this plinth, this object, which is sort of similar and relates to the art world and the way people interact and, you know, in society in general. It's as if the power of this plinth has been taken away and is causing them tremendous amount of grief.